The very first Mass, in the very first reading, on my very first day, was this reading from Jeremiah. And I had often said to God, I'll do it, I just need a sign. And so the very first day, the very first Mass, the very first reading, the very first words, "You duped me, O Lord, and I let myself be duped." That ended up being a good challenge those years in my life, and helped me grow immensely spiritually. And I'm assuming that God has put those words here in the very first reading, at my very first Mass, in my very first pastorate, because he intends on doing good things again. The way that it's translated isn't always the exact words, and they say every translator is a traitor, and so some people will translate the word duped with the word seduced. You seduced me, O Lord, and I let myself be seduced. Because when we're listening to this passage of Jeremiah, we're dealing with a man who has dedicated and loved God so much that he can't keep, despite the persecution, despite the rejection, despite the difficulties, that he can't keep the message to himself, even though no one wants to hear it. You heard Jeremiah's words that it's like a fire burning up within him when he tries to keep it to himself. He's trying to make his life easy. He's trying to do what St. Paul in the epistle says not to do. He's trying to conform to the world around him. But beloved, once the fire of faith has begun kindling and burning within our hearts, there's almost nothing that can put it out and leave us with satisfaction. And so indeed, we're challenged not to go backwards, but deeper. Some scholars will talk about Jesus' words in this particular section of Matthew's Gospel as the three different ways. First, the purgative way. Deny yourself, Jesus said. To become detached from this world, but also to be appreciative of the gifts in it. To look at what we need to let go, because it's not providing us with spiritual health and strength. The things that we're attached to, or the things we avoid. That's why I love praying the Confiteor before the Mass, because it reminds us of the things that I have done and the things I have failed to do. And we pray for one another. We take up our crosses together, the illuminative way. So in the first stage of conversion is the purgative way, where Jesus says, deny yourself, be selfless. If you follow Word on Fire, you know Bishop Barron, very famous evangelist, is always reminding us of the description of love from the philosophers as willing the good of the other. You can't do that if you're attached to yourself. And so the less attached we are, and St. Francis is a great example, the more we are able to love. The less we are attached, the more we are able to love. And the more that we love, the more virtue we have. We take up our crosses and we fight against, as St. Paul said, this age. Because the gospel presents in each generation new challenges. And the reason why you and I are here where we are now is because God has given us some definitive work to do. And for this reason, the third part of the way to follow me is the unitive way. That after denying ourselves and expanding our capacity to love because we are concerned for the other, and taking up our crosses so that we continue to fight, offering our bodies as spiritual worship, as sacrifice, day in and day out, by living the virtues, by making ourselves more comfortable in that fight, that then we will follow him, the unitive part of the path, the unitive way, that we are now one with him, that we have the mind of Christ, that we love with his heart, and maybe not always perfectly, but what else are we Christians for if not to be other Christs? What else were we baptized for, confirmed for, if not to receive his very Spirit? What do we come to communion for, if not to receive him into ourselves? You will find that we go back and forth between the illuminative, between the purgative. Sometimes in life it will be easier to be in the unitive. But it doesn't mean that we give up. We keep up the sacrifice. What is the nature of sacrifice if not to receive? We give so that we might receive. We give of ourselves so that there is room to receive from God. When Peter came up to Jesus and said, "God forbid it, Lord. I will not let this happen to you," we're shocked, are we not, to hear Jesus call him Satan. But what does Satan mean? In Hebrew, it means adversary. We, without Christ, powerful in our lives, are adversaries of God. When we conform our lives to this age, we are adversaries of God. So why do we deny ourselves? Why do we take up our crosses? Why do we follow him? Because he is the only one that has ever been the perfect image. We are made in the image and in the likeness of God, and if we do not follow after him, we're left here fighting against him. May Christ empty us in our conversion. May he illumine us by his grace, and by his mercy, may he unite us to himself.